Hi, everyone. Oh, should I wait? No, okay. Yeah, welcome to e-flux. It's a real pleasure to introduce Blas, a writer and an artist who teaches at Goldsmiths in London. Yeah, it's a real pleasure also to be collaborating with Art in General. Many of you probably caught Zach's opening there for his show Contra Internet last night, those who didn't. The show will be on view from January 27th until April 21st at Art in General in Dumbo, yeah, at 145 Plymouth Street. I'd also like to thank Laurel Patak and Patrick Tajoko from Art in General for their input in putting this together and the opening last night. And I would also, I think it's also worthwhile to check out more information about the show get out your pens and papers at http://www.artitions/650. And also there's Zach's essay with the similar name, Contra Internet, from e-flux Journal, which I think it's also worth reading if you find the chance. Please get out your pencils and paper, www.e-flux.co/JOU/INTERNET. Please give a warm welcome to Zach Blas.
Just wait to.
Great chill embraces this place.
Your Majesty, by our leave.
'Tis a true marvel. What signifieth this corpse? A dark parable it is, to my understanding.
Light and dark, hot or cold, living or dead. Mankind is attracted by the polarities.
Seeing or not seeing.
Sweet angel, little I thought to be thus transported from my dear England.
Qui cunge in hoc speculum inspicit, partes sapientiae totus mundi in illo videre et adiscere potest.
Spirit Ariel, we would have knowledge of God.
Please your Majesty, gaze deep into the crystal.
We, Elizabeth of England, a feather in the wind of time, pray for knowledge of God. From the deep whirlwind of shadows, on the edge of the abyss. Where is God? Is God dead?
Save your souls, ladies and gentlemen. The greatest live show on earth. Save your souls. Welcome to the Palace of Heavenly Delights.
And it was sweet in ancient times, walk upon England's long and free, and was
And here's the man who made it all possible. Cardinal Borgia Gins, the man who picked up the 30 pieces of silver and made the movie you saw on TV. This is your last chance, folks, so come on in. Borgia Gins is giving up the theatre and going into the car park business.
Without progress, life would be unbearable. Progress has taken the place of heaven. It's like pornography. Better than the real thing. They prefer the shadows. The light's too cruel for them. They're all working for me, and they follow blindly, and their life insurance.
In British filmmaker Derek Jarman's 1978 queer punk film Jubilee, Queen Elizabeth and her spiritual advisor John Dee have gathered at Mortlake. The year is 1597, and Elizabeth asks of Dee to summon forth a spirit, the spirit Ariel, who then reveals to them upon their request a future England, rendered post-apocalyptic in this film, but also set amidst the late 70s punk anarchists in London. In the scene we've just watched, the music star Lounge Lizard, played by transgender musician and actor Jane County, has just been murdered by Bod, the leader of a queer punk group. And earlier in the film, Bod also murders Queen Elizabeth II. Elizabeth uneasily gazes at Lounge Lizard's dead body, as it embodies a strange and unexpected future for her. And John Dee provides words to aid Elizabeth in apprehending this situation. And provoked, Elizabeth asks the spirit Ariel if God exists, and she is instructed to look into a crystal ball. At this point, we're transported to the so-called Temple of Heavenly Delight, a debauched nightclub that has replaced Westminster Cathedral. And the song Wargasm in Porntopia plays as an orgy breaks out between Jesus Christ and his apostles. And Borgia Gens arrives, the one and only premier media impresario in this dystopian future. He controls all the music, punk included, and thus he decides who gets to become a star and who doesn't. Before walking inside, he diabolically proclaims that progress has replaced heaven. While the crystal ball is the anchor upon which Queen Elizabeth is able to gain access to the future of the nation she rules, it seems that the crystal ball ultimately does not grant her the power or authority to alter this course of the future in Jubilee. So in the film, her queenly grandeur is reduced to a kind of fragile uneasiness because the media impresario is the one that rules. So in Jarman's Jubilee, the crystal ball simultaneously reveals a historical shift from a queen, her advisor, and a spirit, to a single media mogul. That is, from royal divine sovereignty to mass media control. This shift is what is mediated, right, through the crystal ball in Jubilee. Now, as most of us know, a crystal ball, typically a transparent object, is used in practices of fortune telling and seeing the future, or what is also called scrying. It is an object of mediation par excellence, yet its transparent materiality and mystical functioning seem to always suggest that it is an object precisely without mediation. We know this so well from popular culture. In Harry Potter, mastering the art of the crystal ball is a pedagogical requisite to become a wizard. Right? Its workings are perfectly at odds, we could say, with Enlightenment knowledge practices or trajectories. And in my favorite, the 1986 film Labyrinth, David Bowie demonstrates to Jennifer Connelly the magical, transformative properties of the crystal ball.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. Nothing more. But if you turn it this way, look into it, it'll show you your dreams. But this is not a gift for an ordinary girl who takes care of a screaming baby. Do you want it? Then forget the baby.
I can't. It is that I don't appreciate what you're trying to do for me, but I want my brother back. He must be so scared.
Sarah.
So in both these instances, the crystal ball enables a transparent vision of the future, we could say, or a transparent vision of the future or an elsewhere. So uses of crystals, crystal healing, crystal gazing, and divination are indeed ancient practices and rituals. But crystal ball gazing is often linked specifically to the Middle Ages. And here emerges the figure of John Dee, both a mystic and a mathematician. In his work, he combined Hermetic philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and astrology. And Dee strongly believed that God, the absolute, and angels could be reached through mathematics and optics. So if in Jarman's Jubilee, we bear witness to a spatio-temporal shift from the divine sovereign to a media mogul, that is, right, one who controls flows of information, we can also describe this perhaps more simply as a shift from spirit to media, or from the heavens to progress, as Borges has already told us. But the very figure of John Dee himself holds together the spiritual and the mediatic. And in Jubilee, it is he, John Dee, that makes intelligible, knowable, the shift from spirit to media, through his very own combination of mysticism and mathematics, which plays out through scrying, crystal gazing. John Dee's various mystical objects are on display at the British Museum in London, and they consist of a black obsidian mirror of Aztec origin, wax seals, and the seal of God, for which shoe stones were placed upon for scrying, a golden amulet, and of course, a crystal ball. So while meanings and interpretations of mysticism vary, one etymological origin comes from the Greek, which means to conceal. So the mystic is defined as engaging in activities and practices that grant access to concealed realities or states that are not accessible through human sense perception. So following this etymological route, mystical experience, one could say, at once conceals mediation, while it also appears transparent and seamless, as with the crystal ball. But what else might the mystical practices of John Dee conceal? Perhaps a political or social motivation. For instance, it is widely known that John Dee avidly supported the development of the British Empire and colonization. So in short, when considering Dee's qualities, which span the mystical, the mathematical, and the imperial, he stands out as a striking blueprint for a new kind of mediatic or mathematical mystic mogul for today. So skipping some centuries, a new kind of scrying practice found its way into the world in 2004, when Palantir Technologies was founded in Silicon Valley, or more precisely, Palo Alto, California. So Palantir Technologies was co-founded by Alex Karp, currently CEO, and Peter Thiel, chairman. And Palantir is a data analytics company that specifically focuses on counterterrorism for the U.S. intelligence community. It's heavily supporting the CIA, and it has been rumored for some time that the company's software aided in the tracking and killing of Osama bin Laden. But Palantir also has a second platform, which is supporting finance data management for Wall Street. And more recently, the company has accelerated predictive policing across the United States. In 2015, the company was valued at over $20 billion, as they are heavily backed by such governmental agencies and also various undisclosed private enterprises, which makes Palantir one of Silicon Valley's most valuable private enterprises. So Palantir consists of two major platforms. Gotham, which was formerly referred to or known as government, is used by governmental security agencies and private counter-terrorist outfits, as well as US law enforcement and Homeland Security, right, all with US security interests. And Gotham works by aggregating large amounts of data and then placing this in a centralized database that can be visualized and analyzed. You will note the evocation of Gotham City here, where Batman fights crime. And here, I can't help but wonder if Thiel and Kemp, a techno-corporate Batman and Robin, longingly wish to project their Palantir logo into the California sky, just like Batman. So Palantir Foundry, which very recently used to be known as Metropolis, offers quantitative analysis for Wall Street banks and hedge funds. It's a platform more oriented towards commercial benefit rather than something governmental, if we can even separate the two, even though Palantir has made this separation in their software. And again, right, although Metropolis is now renamed as Foundry, which this happened just in October, we once again seem to be taken to some kind of teenage boy terrain of comic book superheroes, as Metropolis is the home to Superman. And maybe this switch to Foundry, or at least the way that I've thought about it, is motivated by a word that sounds maybe a bit more masculine and labor-intensive. So for some time, Palantir alleged it was not involved with the workings of the National Security Agency in the US or other modes of mass surveillance which would violate privacy and civil liberties, pillars of Palantir Technologies' mission statement. Yet after the Edward Snowden leaks, top secret documents revealed highly celebrated uses of Palantir software by the Five Eyes, the intelligence alliance comprising the countries Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. And at this time, it also became known that Palantir was a core software booster of the X-Keyscore program operated by the NSA, which is one of the most aggressive data valence applications in the NSA's arsenal. So when reading over the last bullet point here, right, which says you can even use it on an iPhone or laptop, I can easily imagine a high five between what I can only call security bros. But what exactly is a Palantir?
The power of Isengard is at your command, Sauron, Lord of the Earth. Ask Warrior, build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Well, Palantir, it turns out, is the all-seeing crystal ball used by wizards in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, specifically for communication and for seeing other parts of the world. You've just watched and are still looking at the evil wizard Saruman at work with a Palantir. Right, so the Palantir sits squarely in the fantastical terrain of magic, wizards, and the mystical, which means Palantir Technologies also places themselves right in this arena. A data analytics company who encourages you to use their software platforms more like crystal scrying, right, rather than working with or analyzing data. So quite simply, the appropriation of the Palantir here frames the crystal ball as that which can do, or right, in fact, for Palantir, does the work of big data analysis. That said, Palantir Technologies apparently must be run by two wizards, and their names are Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, as I've already mentioned. And at Palantir, right, Thiel and Karp's sworn goal is to protect privacy and civil liberties. And it's incredible to think these words were just copy and pasted from Palantir's website today. Because if privacy and civil liberties are not already violated by Palantir's concealed collaborations with the NSA and other international security agencies, let us ask this. Is a crystal ball ever fully under the control of a single wizard, or even two? So take Peter Thiel, a conservative, a gay man, a Trump supporter, a naturalized American citizen, in short, a homo-nationalist. So the platform of Palantir seems to have ultimately set in motion for Thiel a practice of scrying in order to activate an alt-right political program that is based on freedom, right, according to him, but not democracy. Because Peter Thiel recently wrote that I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible. And this is a statement perhaps maybe agreeable to some on the left if you prefer something like communism other than democracy, but right, Thiel's alternative to democracy is something like a totalized Google state of techno-utopian neoliberalized private corporations with AI gods that promise immortality through imminently arriving technological singularity and the supposed coming superintelligence. So whatever is on the other side of a crystal ball reading about the world's future for Thiel, it is aligned and most likely in the service of someone like Donald Trump. So here it's hard not to think of Peter Thiel as a distorted and datified John Dee, no longer serving the Queen of England, but rather the President of the United States. So what might both Trump and Thiel see in the Palantir if they did a gazing session together? I'm not answering that. And of course, Palantir Technologies is not alone in this elixir of data and magic and mysticism and securitization. So here consider the NSA's program titled Mystic, which was started in 2009 and is able to record the content of all phone calls from an entire country within a single month. Or there is also the Oracle Corporation, which was founded in 1977 in California by Ayn Rand devotee Larry Ellison and Bob Miner and Ed Oates, which provides enterprise software and data management systems. But today, crystal balls also morph and take new shapes, but their transparent surface is still unmistakable. So here, a Japanese company named Gatebox has developed an artificial intelligence named Azuma Hikari, who lives inside what we could call a crystal ball and virtually serves single straight men. And she started shipping out this past December.
朝ですよ。起きてください。ねえ、起きてってば。おはよう。
おはよう。
あ、今日雨が降るかもしれないから傘持って行って。急がないと遅刻しちゃうよ。
行ってきます。
行ってらっしゃい。
So the crystal ball continues to scale up, we could say, with new Silicon Valley architecture innovations and investments in glass. Here we see Amazon's new building in Seattle, biodomes, microcosms that transparently emanate corporate networked agendas as the path to the future. So here we could say Amazon itself becomes a crystal ball, transparent yet mystic or concealed. So for all of this, I have a major question. When looking into the Palantirs of Silicon Valley, what does one see?
Palantir is transparent,
dedicated,
mission-focused,
challenging,
nerdy,
down to earth,
just a little awkward, really smart,
and revolutionary.
Working at Palantir means
Human-computer symbiosis.
Hacking the problem.
Connecting people to data.
removing friction.
embracing the weirdness.
Working at Palantir means doing what's best no matter how hard it is.
To solve the problems nobody else can. You can discover that thing that you're actually really great at.
We feel like we're still a 100-person company even though we're 1,500.
We get in, we figure out their existential problems, solve them, and then take it to the highest vision that it could be.
Palantir is
simplifying data,
meritocracy,
excellent guidance and mentorship,
preserving the culture, fighting terrorism,
trying to combat human trafficking,
anti-money laundering,
cybersecurity,
work in disaster relief,
and chronic homelessness.
So perhaps a core difference here from Jarman's Jubilee is that in the Palantir, the future is gleamed, but equally so is the possibility of preempting that future. So now we add preempting the future to seeing the future. So that said, if John Dee calls forth spirits so that Queen Elizabeth may converse with angels as a nationalist endeavor, then who or what exactly does Palantir call forth? What is conjured by Palantir so that the US president, security agencies, and financial organizations may share discourse with one another on the future?
Palantir is a product that allows us to use a bunch of the information systems that we already have available, but kind of make sense of all the noise that's out there. For years, we've had stovepipe systems that have a lot of information, but don't talk to each other and don't compare that information. And Palantir allows us to do that. It's a really important tool for investigations. It's a really important tool for crime fighting.
What we liked about the Palantir solution is number one, they're problem solvers. So they get in there and no matter what the data, what kind of form it's in, they're going to integrate it in a way that it's usable.
Palantir brings in many databases into one system. Currently, Palantir brings in the following databases: crime and arrest report information, field interview cards, automatic license plate reader information, DMV information, rap sheets, and we are working with Palantir engineers to bring in more information.
My name is Officer Gamero, and I'm assigned here at Newton Division. We use Palantir on a daily basis. That's one of the first databases I log into. there's something happening every day in this area, and the faster we could get that information to our detectives, the faster they could get onto the case and hopefully get the person that's responsible for the crime in custody. Palantir software helped us to identify a suspect vehicle that was used in a robbery. We had a couple of victim statements saying that there was a gray Cadillac involved. With the system, I was able to conduct a query with the partial plate of 671. Through the many choices it gave me back, or possible matches it gave me, we were able to obtain a picture of one particular Cadillac, which the victim was able to identify as a suspect vehicle. It was just a number of days later that detectives saw the vehicle traveling northbound on one of our major corridors, went ahead and followed the vehicle and actually observed them committing a robbery. The suspects were then taken into custody at that time.
Recently, one of our divisions in North Hollywood, a crime analyst picked up a very partial piece of information relative to a homicide. First name only, and a physical description. Normally that kind of thing, it's nice to know, maybe it'd be worth something later, it goes in the back of the book, it doesn't go anywhere. But by inputting that information into Palantir, she was able to work up a suspect that became a really viable piece of information for the detectives. That's the kind of thing that these information systems bring. They can take the smallest clue and turn it into something big.
The next step with Palantir would be to get more and more people trained. And we're not just going to dump this tool on you. We'll bring you in for some formalized training here at Racer. We'll have people from the company available to teach you. Then we'll also have people available from Palantir to come out to the area to work with the end user. And we'll, on an ongoing basis, have Racer personnel available for technical assistance. There'll be a help desk and some other things. So it's not just a program, you come in, you get 8-hour training, and then we're gone.
There is a lot of time involved in this. There is a lot of effort involved in this, and there is a considerable cost and a change in the way that we do things. But I think that the end result is going to be well worth the effort. I think that the end result will allow us to keep LA safer and allow investigators and police officers to do their jobs better.
So when looking through the crystal balls of Silicon Valley, it appears that police take the place of spirits as our contemporary mystical guides. So I would like to describe all of this as metric mysticism. But what is that? So if we recall that mysticism is a kind of union or experience with an absolute, which could be God, then in metric mysticism, God and the absolute get rendered as data. The metrically mystical experience is exactly the application of analytics to such data. So the idea of the platform is everything you need now to reach the absolute. So such analytic platforms may be called X-keyscore, they could be called Prism, or they may be called Palantirs. But the metric mysticism is not just simply another word for data analysis. It goes at least one step further and recasts any mathematical or scientific objectivism as an unwavering eternal truth, metaphysical or transcendental truth beyond the reproach of human beings. So basically, the absolute is now, in this framework, a data absolute. So with metric mysticism, if the absolute is not spirit, it's rather when one gains access to this data absolute, and it can visualize the future through data calculation and securitized preemption. And like the crystal ball, mediation always seems to disappear in metric mysticism. Even though the tools might be known, the absolutely wrong question to ask is, how does this tool or piece of software actually work? Or worse still, who made this? So transparency is evoked once again. But the real stuff that undergirds metric mysticism, you could say things like techniques, computational operations, human intention, are concealed or black boxed. And of course, if techniques are concealed, then possibly, probably something like political motivation probably is also, which here might nicely be packaged as Make America Great Again. So to be clear, metric mysticism, I think, is undoubtedly American-centric and often Islamophobic. And if one were to look closer at this idea of metric mysticism, what might be some of the tools or rituals of a metric mystic? Well, we would surely need to include predictive policing software in which law enforcement is supposedly able to predict a crime before it even happens. Or what about an airport security agent as a metric mystic? There is the ritual of scanning a body, positioning it, hands up, feet on the yellow marks, directing it into a machine called Provision, a seemingly transparent scanning, or shall we say, scrying device. So the union or encounter here, which is a kind of gendered data analytics for sure, results in a reading, a mystical reading. So the absolute takes root in this reading like magic to conjure what I like to think of as something like a data soul. So there's no longer a queer spirit like Ariel to converse with in Jarman's Jubilee, but rather we have these silent data souls that we're looking at that can only be addressed or interacted with informatically. So no longer an embodied person, but rather a data visualization that somehow contains access to absolute truth. So if John Dee, had his collection of mystical texts and treatises to study, then TSA agents have their own, we could say, metrically mystical scriptures to disallow the bad or the anomalous. And here you're looking at recent airport security guidelines published within the last 2 years on how to spot a potential terrorist. So it's hard not to wonder, after I've visited the British Museum so many times to look at John Dee's mystical objects, after some centuries, will these devices, objects, and texts from airport security and TSA also once, at some point, be put on display, just like John Dee's at the British Museum? So mysticism, often comes with not only rituals and practices, but with a symbology. So consider sigils. They are understood as a kind of symbol or a signature for a spiritual entity or maybe a demon. And this signature or seal, must be known in order to summon forth a particular spirit, So recall John Dee's seal of God to channel and call forth God. Or there's also the seal of Satan, which I bet a lot of you are familiar with. In chaos magic, there's a process known as sigilization, which is when words of a statement of intent are reduced to a kind of abstract design, and then they're charged with the will of its creator. So with sigils in mind, the Palantir Technologies website literally seems to be exploding with symbology of metric mysticism. Here you have tight, minimalist, networked symbols, often composed of nodes and edges, or dots and lines, to accompany each technology and functionality that a particular Palantir platform offers. So I kind of see each of these as like a mini yet complete network logic. And here you're looking at different functionalities from the Gotham platform. So we see that search describes a function across multiple data sets, while Horizon is a memory function. Yet, as these symbols proliferate with Palantir Technologies, I can't help but wonder and look at these are they the seals for a certain spiritual entity, a demon, probably, or sigils charged with the intent of the Palantir Corporation? right? To look at their clean, networked lines. If they are summoning anything, a further question must be subtended, right? What futures do they predict, and which do they preempt? So to ask that question differently, when looking into the Palantirs of Silicon Valley, right, what is their purpose?
What is Palantir's mission? Save the Shire.
Save the Shire.
Save the Shire.
So apparently, the mission is to save the Shire. So perhaps unsurprisingly, we return once again to the realm of Tolkien. In his novels, the Shire is a region of Middle-earth exclusively settled by hobbits. And right, the landscape appears calm, it's rather pastoral, and it certainly reminds me of the English countryside, even though, right, there are mountains which usually do not dot the English countryside. So 3 points concerning the Shire immediately pop out to me. Number one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Shire is only populated by one race of people. And those are hobbits, and they're usually white. Number two, the Shire is described as a voluntarily orderly society. And they have no governmental services except a message service and the Watch. So they have a police force and some type of communications organization. So right, the abandonment here of all governmental services except communication and policing is almost too obvious of a delicious fantasy for organizing society, right, for Palantir Technologies. But I think fantasy is absolutely the operative word here, as I'm not sure life would resemble the Shire if we were under such a mode of governance. And then three, perhaps most obviously, the Shire is simply not the world, right? It's not the Earth. So there's a vested interest in only a particular geographic region, right? Only saving a particular geographic region. Okay, so I feel quite strongly that this emergence of metric mysticism does not mean that one should just, right, completely throw out the magical or the esoteric or the occult altogether, because these are and have been, vital queer and minoritarian practices for knowledge, for being, for community, and for survival. So to conclude, I'd like to suggest actually a redemptive reading. I'm not sure he deserves it, but a redemptive reading of an esoteric glyph designed by John Dee in 1564. So what you're looking at is called the Monas Hieroglyphica. And this symbol embodies John Dee's understanding of the unity of the cosmos. It is a composite of various esoteric and astrological symbols. So from top to bottom on the glyph, you have the moon, then the sun, then the elements, and fire. And notice, what's striking to me about this in comparison to the Palantir Technologies sigils, that these symbols do not interlock and connect via a network logic of nodes and edges. So unlike Palantir's symbols of data abstractions, I think Dee's glyph evokes Earth and its materiality as total and absolute. That the Monas Hieroglyphica does not exactly let materiality, earthly materiality, slip away. So then maybe, just maybe, mediation does not slip away either. So when I reflect on this symbol, I wonder if it could somehow be another mode in which to approach the mystical and data, right? That is not this networked data as some kind of assumed transparency or assumed absolute, but rather something that is irresolutely material, fragile, finite, even geologic, of the earth and of matter. Okay, I have to get into my backpack. I forgot to take this out before I started. Give me a minute. So, right, if not a Palantir, then what? So this is a chunk. It's probably hard for some of you to see this, but this is a chunk of polycrystalline silicon. So, right, if not a Palantir, what if we were to use a chunk of polycrystalline silicon as a scrying stone? So, right, silicon, right, that material which is at the heart of so much computational technology. And, right, maybe if we scry with the silicon, it wouldn't be necessarily to predict the future. But maybe if we look into this, it gives us an opportunity to consider, to sit with, and not let slip away the material conditions that constitute our historical present. So I think to do this, to look into the chunk of silicon, reminds us that any future horizon is not simply some preset computer database, but it's something precarious, it's something vulnerable, it's something open, it's transformable, and maybe most importantly, it's not something fully controlled by data wizards and Palantirs, but also it's not something fully controlled by ourselves either. Thank you.